I would like the article to come out because I like having my sources publicly available when I go out and publicly talk about stuff. But essentially, this was a guy that almost successfully took over every major port in the United States, and it was facilitated to the outrage of Congress by top people in the Bush administration, some of whom later engaged in the Epstein cover-up. And so if you've been following some of this recent reporting in the emails, of Epstein's relationship with this guy, they say the earliest they can date it to is 2006. There is photographic evidence it happened earlier at the time that this group was lobbying these top Bush officials to sign off on this movement. It was really an acquisition of the existing port operator by Dubai Ports World, which is what Ben Sulayem was managing. And intimately involved in this is a guy that I was initially following and was a source of my article initially, which is Andrew Farcas, who's long been known as Andrew Cuomo's money man, as it were. And a lot has come out about his relationship with Epstein as well, but he's been a frequent business partner of this guy and connected him with Trump, for example, because with a DP World affiliated real estate firm, Trump did a lot of his Dubai-based and UAE-based building, including on the Palm Islands, which this guy ultimately controlled. And it gets crazier than that, if you can believe it. For example, Farcas has intimate ties to the missing HUD money that Catherine Austin Fitts has talked about at length for decades. It's pretty much provable that he was involved in siphoning a lot of it off, and then gets intimately involved with this particular network, including Epstein, who was a known money launderer for the Iran-Contra crowd. And this, shadow government of sorts. And then, as we know from the later releases, these were, they were very involved with Epstein's activities at the Virgin Islands. The Sheik helped him purchase his island when he normally wouldn't have been able to. This team of him and Farcas intimately involved in USVI stuff, even beyond Epstein, co-owned a marina with Epstein that he needed to control in order to traffic girls to and from his island. And also, as I'll be reporting, a very disturbing proprietary telecom system that wouldn't have been accessible to anyone but them. So there's a lot of very disturbing things going on there. And I would add, too, that Andrew Farcas was listed as a reference by Jeffrey Epstein for one of his USVI companies, along with Jess Staley, which was apparently the jumping off point to investigate Jess Staley as part of this now settled court case between the USVI and JP Morgan. But if they went after Jess Staley for that, why didn't they go after Farcas when he was, listed in the same spot? Yeah. And I would argue it's because he is way too close. Farcas is way too close to top, very high-ranking figures in the Trump administration that are intimately involved in Middle Eastern affairs.
Right. Jeez.
Maybe you can unpack that piece a little bit more, the Middle Eastern affairs piece, as we barrel towards war with Iran, probably on March 1st, according to sources we've been speaking to. Jared Kushner buying up, Gaza, and then the Israeli piece. I know people, and I want you to speak for yourself, people have conflated, what you have said about Israel and the Mossad connections and CIA, and people like Whitney Webb says he's a Mossad agent, and you have to come out and correct people on that. So now that we hear about the Israeli connections in the apartment, the security system, and all of that, what can you say about the Middle Eastern Israeli connections with Epstein now?
And that are still inside the Trump White House that you just said. That's fascinating.
Yeah, great point.
Yeah. So, regarding Andrew Farcas, the main connection, the closest connection there, he's obviously close with Trump himself, but also he's very intimately involved with the Kushner family. And a lot of the money behind Kushner family real estate deals actually traces back to Andrew Farcas, not the Kushners themselves. So people have argued that Kushner has an outsized influence on the Trump administration. So if true, I doubt any meaningful pursuit of Andrew Farcas would happen, even though he was involved in the infrastructure for the trafficking itself, among other things. And as far as Epstein's role to the Middle East in general, so it depends on what Middle Eastern country you're talking about. There's obviously the UAE ties and his involvement with Saudi Arabia, specifically Mohammed bin Salman, the Crown Prince. He was involved in advising their sovereign wealth funds, apparently of both countries. His ties to the Saudis allegedly go back to the 1980s or so. If you may remember, he was found. One of his residents that was raided, because not all of them were, contained an Austrian passport that had a lot of stamps for Saudi Arabia and listed Saudi Arabia as an address. Actually, this ties in kind of to the Prince Andrew story a little bit, because in this period of time, Epstein was allegedly the mentee of an arms dealer named Douglas Leese, who was leading the representation of the UK's BAE systems in creating, which would later win the Al Yamaha deal, which is the basis for UK-Saudi military relationship. And it was a hugely significant arms deal for Britain and BAE systems. And actually, Prince Andrew, in that role as a trade representative, would later step in to prevent investigating the legality of aspects of that deal, and was also a big, salesperson globally for weapons, for BAE systems particularly, which, again, is significant in that it ties back directly to, Epstein's own mentor in arms smuggling. And, bin Salman himself, when he first came out, it was a big charm offensive, right? But then he started promoting like this post-oil vision for Saudi Arabia, and a lot of the things he was promoting openly involved things that were funded by Epstein. You may remember, for example, he gave Sophia the robot citizenship, and that robot was funded with Epstein money in part, and the people involved there did that. So and they've reported since 2019, but I think the photographs are now available that Epstein had pictures with prominent people from the Gulf countries, including Mohammed bin Salman, including Emirati sheiks. And another thing to note there, as far as the UAE ties go, is that Epstein had a relationship with the bank BCCI in the 1980s, and potentially up until it collapsed with 1991, which was very important to this network in which he operated. And BCCI was investigated to an extent, not as fully as I would have liked, by the U.S. Senate. And there's a U.S. Senate report on BCCI you can read. And if you go to the end and sort of the appendix, they leave as an uninvestigated lead the fact that this bank, which was basically a CIA shadow bank, was running a sex trafficking operation very similar in terms of how it functioned to what Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell were doing. But in the Senate report itself, it says that these main